Hi there. I'm Eileen Dietz,
And I'm Pazuzu.
and you probably know us best from The Exorcist. And Pazuzu and I are here to tell you that we are
Listening to the Don't Go Out There horror movie podcast.
and so should you. Otherwise,
I am Pazuzu, and I am going to come and get you. In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to a special episode of the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast. I just want to thank all our fans and listeners. We really appreciate all the support. And before we jump into tonight's film review, I just want to, get the business part knocked out. Check out our website, don'tgooutthere.com. You can find everything you need to know about us there. Our interviews, episodes, celebrity shout-outs, store, our blog, it's all on there. And check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search for Don't Go Out There on those platforms and you'll find us. And tonight we're taking a quick break from our Creature Feature Month. And this is our 100th episode, so this is a big monument and milestone for us. And we did a Twitter poll and, decided amongst the group of hosts, we needed to review an extremely iconic horror movie in the genre. And tonight we're finally taking on 1973's The Exorcist, one of the most influential horror movies of all of them. Let's just give our quick general overview. I'll go first. I think a lot of us, all four of us, are kind of torn, maybe not Dustin, just on how we feel about it. I think we all acknowledge its greatness, its influence, but maybe it doesn't have the rewatchability and the enjoyment like a lot of other movies have. I'm in that boat for sure. I like this movie, but this isn't a movie that, if I'm at home on Thursday night and I got a couple hours to burn, I'm going to pick up and watch it. But I think the acting is good, and I respect what this movie's done for the genre. Brian, do you want to go next, brother?
Yeah, sure. And the first thing before I get into my review, I just want to give a shout out to friend of the show, Joe Larson. She's kind of started a little side business where she's making these just amazing Jason masks that are painted up like the Camp Crystal Lake sign. And I've seen some of these things. I think Nico actually owns one himself. She was she was nice enough to send him one. Sure, I don't know about the other three hosts, but I didn't get one, Joe. But anyway, go check out our socials, or we've posted this everywhere. You guys, she's charging like $60, I think, for them. They look amazing. Just wanted to kind of get a shout out. They're something you definitely want to go check out.
Yeah, Brian, I'll make sure my mask came in today, but it's over at Karen's house. I'll make sure I post it on these socials tomorrow, and I'll link her page. So, and if anyone wants to check it out, they're like $60 a piece, I think, but they're beautiful, and I can't wait to see it in hand. But go ahead, Brian, with your review.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, we've talked about this on the show before, but despite my mouth and, the way that I act, I'm actually a pretty religious person in my beliefs. So, I 100% believe in demons and demonic possession, which is why demonic possession movies, I'm very uncomfortable with. And I'm also not trying to invite some demonic presence unintentionally into my life or home. So you won't even hear me say like, a demon's name, especially like in this movie or any of the other ones. With that said, I really appreciate this movie in particular for, the classic it is and what it did for film as a whole. Hell, this damn thing was nominated for what, 2 Academy Awards or something like that. I mean, it's legendary. I mean, that's why we picked it for our 100th, episode. With that said, I don't like watching this movie. It's not an enjoyable movie for me to watch, and a lot about it bothers me and makes me uncomfortable. Would I say it scares me? No, but it's hard for me to explain. Uncomfortable is a very good word for me to use, I guess. From being some cute little girl, and kids in general, I have a soft spot for to it. Being about the one supernatural thing that I believe in and have a genuine fear about. This movie isn't something I care to watch, just sit down ever, and probably will never do again, honestly, if I don't have to. Um, it's way too long, but like I try to do, I don't like to bitch about a movie without offering a fix. So I have some stuff throughout the review I think that you can cut to remedy that problem. But, like my feelings on The Shining, I can separate the two and can appreciate this movie for all it's done for a genre, which, I love so much.
Yeah,
Mike,
I
you
kind
want
of
to
have a
go
lot.
next?
Yeah, I kind of have a lot of similar feelings that Brian has. I know, shocker, but I think this movie is a masterclass in filmmaking. And what I mean by that is the camera work, the cinematography, the sound, the set design, the practical effects, even the lack of music in this movie is important. And I think it plays well. So I'll go out and I'll start by saying I understand why this movie is held in such a high regard. I really do. That being said, I don't like this movie. I've been very clear that I don't believe in this stuff, and I like our show because we could have differing opinions. I don't believe in demonic possession, but if someone does, I think that's fine. And if it's scary to you, then I completely understand that and can see why this movie would be scary to someone. But it's not scary to me. And there are parts now with hindsight that I can kind of sit back and laugh at almost because it's been parodied to death. And I think Scream suffered from that, and I think this movie has suffered from that. I mean, even Linda Blair parodies this stuff. And so again, the acting, the camera work, everything that's as far as a technical standpoint is fantastic. I mean, it really is a masterclass in horror filmmaking and just filmmaking in general. It's not. I mean, it was nominated for Best Picture, which is unheard of now for a horror film. But in 1970, whatever, it was one of the best films being made at the time. And I think it's a good story by David Blatty, and I think it's good. All the people involved, really well done. And I know there's a lot of backstory behind this movie and how they made it, and all the curses and all that stuff that we're going to get into. But it's just as far as my enjoyment of the movie, I have a really hard time getting in. It's really slow. The stuff that's good is good. The stuff that's bad is just like a snooze fest to me. So I'm not trying to shit on anyone's favorite horror movie. It's been labeled the scariest movie of all time. It's just not. It's not my cup of tea. There's even other exorcism movies I'd rather watch, like Emily Rose, for instance. I know that's sacrilege what I just said, but that's just how I feel. So I'm looking forward to talking about it, but I'm more excited to talk about the filmmaking part of this movie than I am the actual movie itself.
Yeah, so I agree with Brian a lot, more than Mike did, because this is my least favorite kind of movie as well. I said it when we did Paranormal Activity. Fuck this kind of movie. Fuck the devil. Keep him out of my house.
Yes.
Fuck those demons. Fuck those kids if they're possessed. Just a lot of fucking going on, not in a good way.
Not in a good way.
I mean, Linda Blair fucked the cross in this movie, so what are you going to do?
Oh, boy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's what she did. What do you want me to do?
Super.
Maybe just not mention it like that. Anyway, regardless.
It's in the movie, pal.
Yeah, we saw it. We don't need to highlight it. I'm surprised we're still sponsored. She drops the F-bomb, and I'm not talking about fuck, the other F-bomb.
Oh, yeah,
but anyway. That being said, here's something that I don't think I've ever even told y'all. This was my first time watching this movie. Obviously, Obviously, I was familiar with the movie. I knew the story. I knew the iconic scenes, the head spinning, the green puke, all that shit, the iconic, Father Marin outside the house. And of course, like you said, Mike, it was parried to death. Scary Movie 2, which we just reviewed, heavily parodied this movie. But
And
more so than that,
did it better.
well,
No, dude, no.
no. Anyway, so yeah, I was familiar with it, obviously, but this is not something that I'm ever just going to click on and watch unless someone says, "All right, we got to review this movie." So just like Paranormal Activity, I'd never planned on watching that shit. That being said, I agree. Now I'm going to pivot from agreeing with Brian and agree a lot with Mike. What you said, this movie is masterfully made. The cinematography is great. Honestly, I feel like this movie not only transcends horror in a lot of the ways in which it's made, but it transcends 1973. When I was watching this, it did not feel like a movie that was made in 1973.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by that is, okay, take the subway scene, for instance. That subway scene, like the lighting, the quality of it. Now, I watched this on HBO Max, so maybe it's been remastered. I'm not sure. But it looked like something that you could pass it off as being in the late 80s. Like the subway scene, the lighting and everything looked like the subway out of the first Ninja Turtles movie. Which was made in 1988, 15 years later. So that's crazy, especially when you consider this movie was only made 10 years after The Birds, which we just talked about how limited technology was. They had to do all practical effects. They didn't have computers. Think about that, like how far cameras came in that 10 years. And that just blew my mind when I watched it and saw how beautiful the movie was. Not metaphorically, just the way it was shot. This is not a beautiful story at all. Although there is some nice redemption. There is some beautiful character arcs in the story, which we'll get into. But overall, very good movie. I can see how if you don't believe in this sort of thing, whatever. But at the same time, you're going to tell me you believe in 40-foot long anacondas that can... Anyway.
No, I do not. But that movie is fun. This movie is a snooze fest.
Okay. Anyway,
I would like to say before we get into it, I'm right there with Dustin. This is my second total in my whole lifetime watching this movie, and as far as I know, unless we somehow do an Exorcist review for our 200th episode, the last time I'm ever going to watch this.
Oh, this is definitely the last time I'll ever watch this film, and it's not because I think it's the drizzling shits. I just think it's slow and doesn't hit that high for me. Anyway, whatever, it's fine. I'd rather hear John Voight talk in his weird accent. That's all.
I mean, I get what you're saying. I don't plan to ever watch it again either, unless, if I'm introducing this movie to someone just to appreciate the classics, because it is a classic, undisputed. But it's not going to be something that I'm going to, like Nico said, I'm not going to say, hey, it's Thursday night, let's watch The Exorcist. Mainly because I don't want that evil in my house.
Exactly.
But anyway, I'm going to let Nico take it away for the scene by scene. Overall, my opinion of this movie is it's a beautifully done film that I want no part of.
All right, before we... Anybody want to say anything else? Opening thoughts? I made a huge mistake as the kind of the scene-by-scene guy by not telling them I have the Blu-ray, which is the extended director's cut, and I think a couple of the guys watched just the theatrical version, so my scene-by-scene will include like the crab walk and stuff like that they didn't get to see, but I don't really think the crab walk's like 5 seconds. It's not that big of a deal. But there are two versions, and let's jump into it. The film starts with a shot of the city and then a close-up to a nun statue, which I don't think is in the theatrical version. We get a title card and then into some Middle Eastern chants, and we're now in northern Iraq. We see several people digging and doing other mine work. A young boy runs to Father Marin and tells him an amulet was found, and he leads him there. Marin digs deeper into the hole after looking over a few other discovered things. He finds something in a rock, and I wrote it seems to shake him up a bit. He's sitting at a table now and shakes violently as he takes his medicine with what looks like alcohol, which I don't think is the proper way to do that. Marin is in an office with another man who looks at their findings. He tells Marin he wishes He didn't have to go, but he replies, "There's something I must do." He's almost ran over by a horse and buggy as he exits the city, and then he's almost shot as he arrives to his next destination by car. He gets to a spot and sees this statue, and I wrote it's dragon-like head, and we see dogs fighting in the desert. And we get an eerie score, and we're now in Georgetown. Chris is in her bed, but gets up after hearing some loud noises in the attic. She checks on her daughter Reagan and sees the window is open, so she closes it and puts the blanket back on her. She goes downstairs and is greeted by the cook, and she asks Carl to go handle the rats in the attic. On set now, and Chris is complaining to the director that she doesn't like the script. Filming starts, and we see Chris marching towards a loud protest. We see Father Karras walking away from the set. Chris gives her luggage to the chauffeur and says she's going to walk home. As she does, I wrote this. One thing I forgot to mention, the score or the soundtrack, Tubular Bells, elite. As she does, the elite score of Tubular Bells plays, and children trick-or-treating run past her. She pauses as she sees two priests talking. She gets home and is given her mail by Sharon. She greets her daughter Reagan and asks about her day. Reagan wants to get a horse now after a fun day of horseback riding. Chris tackles Reagan playfully after grabbing something I wrote just a snack jar. I think all of us kind of, or I don't know, maybe not Dustin, but I think all of us kind of agreed there's this the beginning is really slow. So there's really not much there to me, but that's the first two scenes I got, Brian. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was talking about the runtime, and I really, honestly, I really do try to not bitch about movies without giving some suggestion on how to fix it. Not that I'm some sort of script doctor or anything, but I just kind of feel like that I don't really want to bitch about it without trying to fix it. And this archaeological part, this I don't think you need. I understand, that it shows Father Marin's relationship with the demon a little bit, of history, but I don't think that that's needed at all. Personally, I mean, it does establish how scared he is of it, but in a movie with such a bloated runtime, and I get that when you're making a movie based on a book, you want to include as much as possible, to get that whole full book experience. But I don't personally think that you can do that fully in a movie. I mean, and if I'm reviewing just this movie, which I am, I mean, we go 10 plus minutes, which may not sound like a long time, but trust me, when you're watching a movie, it is, with almost nothing happening. I mean, I know that's probably a hot take because, with diehards of any movie, not just this one, any of them, I mean, you want as much as possible in there. I mean, I want to watch a 3-hour bloated Ghostbusters movie because I love it so much and it's not going to bother me. But, from a neutral third party, which in this case is me, cut that entire first part out and just start in Georgetown. That's just a suggestion. Jack Nicholson was actually up for the part of Father Karras, which would have been very interesting. I mean, I can't see anyone else in the role, but Nicholson is too good to ever count out of anything. So it would have been very interesting to see his take on it for sure. But Jason Miller, to me, makes this movie. I think that he's fantastic and by far the best actor in this, or actress in this movie. Now I love the beginning. Like you said, we do get that just iconic Exorcist music, which to me is classic and doesn't. It's to me as well known as Halloween '78, and I just wanted to put in there that I absolutely love it. Lastly, I do like the establishing of the family dynamic with Chris and Linda Blair's, Reagan, but Linda Blair actually received her Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination before that. It was widely known that, previous supporting actress winner Mercedes McCambridge had actually provided the voice of the demon, which is a whole nother controversy, as friend of the show, Eileen Dietz, thank you for doing the intro to this episode. She was actually also involved with a lot of the stunt work and voicing, including the vomiting scene later. But both she and Mercedes McCambridge said director Friedkin tried to cover up their participation in this movie, trying to give Linda Blair sole credit, perhaps hoping that, it would maybe bolster her chances in an Oscar bid. But it totally backfired because of the scandal. That does, she didn't win it, but that doesn't change the fact that, considering her age in this movie, and we talk about child actors and actresses, Linda Blair is great in this role to me, and I think it's because it just being herself is so, I don't want to say adorable, but like, she's somebody that you really not relate to as, you show a lot of empathy for and care for this girl when she's not even on the screen that much. But that's all I have for the first set.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna come out flat out and say you can cut that entire Iraq scene out of this movie, and I don't think you need it. I get trying to develop where the demon comes from, and I'm okay with it having a backstory and an origin, but I don't think it needed to be 10, 11 minutes or whatever it was of stuff that I just don't think we need. And I do think it takes away from the good of this movie. It just drags it down. It's very boring. It's very long. And I know, like Brian said, you hate to kind of cut a movie's legs out from underneath it without offering some kind of, way to fix it. But to me, the only way to fix it is to get rid of it. I don't think it affects the movie in any way outside of the father. That's it. Like, it I think we could have done anything else, or at least shortened it up or something. So I would just take it all out. And there's really, I want to say thank you to William Friedkin because he made note taking on this a little bit easier because I didn't take shit during that because I don't think it's that damn important, even though I'm talking about it now. So hypocrite me, of course. But I do like the rest of this because we're getting some character development with the family. With Damien Karras. Like I like that, and there's not a whole lot that I have wrote down about it, but I did note that to me can make me emotionally attached to the story, which this movie does do. I just have some other problems with it, but as far as the family dynamic, the mom and the daughter, and the acting all around here is really, really good. I said it that the acting has nothing to do with this. Linda Blair is great. Ellen Burstyn is great. Jason Miller is great. There's a lot of really good acting here. And even in this scene, where they're kind of snuggling or tackling or play fighting or whatever, I really like that stuff. And I like what it sets up. I just wish that the first part of this set of scenes we could have just left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, so I agree completely. The first time, okay. So like I said, this is the first time I watched this movie in full. So when I turned it on, when I hit play, I was like, what the fuck? What is this? Did I accidentally click play on Indiana Jones? Like I really didn't know what was happening because everything I'd ever known about this movie took place at that house in Georgetown, which, by the way, fun fact, that house is located in real life at the corner of 36 and Prospect in Georgetown in DC. And it's actually a weed store now. That's right. It's a dispensary as of 2020. So you can go get weed where Linda Blair got fucked up. And there's something. I agree. We don't need this shit with Iraq. We don't need this shit spending so much time with the movie making scene with the mom. To me, that was unnecessary too. Like this whole opening
Agreed.
was
100% agreed.
There's no payoff for any of it really. I get, like you said, I get trying to establish a backstory for this demon or whatever, but did it even really do that? Because how the fuck did this demon in Iraq, when he uncovers the artifact, how does that have any bearings on what's going on in Washington D.C. when we don't even know who the fuck these people are at this point? So I don't like it at all, the opening to this movie. Now that being said, once she does get home, it does there. Okay, then it's fine because you see the relationship between her and her kids and the other people living in the house, which is not established who the fuck they are. Who's who when this happened. Who's the mom? What's going on? She goes in there and checks on the girl, but then she goes downstairs, an older woman. So it's like, is this the older sister? It's very confusing the first time you watch it. But that being said, there's good elements in this. It's very unnerving. The scenes in Iraq they're very unnerving when the clock stops and he's like, what the fuck? And he starts shaking, convulsing. He almost gets run over by someone who looks like the spawn of Satan in a horse carriage. She looked like if Satan and Mother Teresa had a baby. She was about 194 years old. it's unnerving, and the lack of. We talked about this with the birds, how there's no score, there's no soundtrack in that movie, and it works the whole time. This one, I think, captures what Brian wanted the birds to do, because it does have music, but when it doesn't, it's very uncomfortable. And so I think that's what Brian was talking about in the birds episode. Is if Hitchcock had done that, then it might have got over more with him. But that being said, okay opening, I guess, just because we get to meet some of the characters towards the end of these two scenes. But overall, they really dropped the ball. Could have been better.
Oh, yeah. Father Karras is at the subway station now, and he's asked by a bum for some money. Now he's walking into a slummy neighborhood and enters a rundown apartment building. He looks at his boxing pictures and changes clothes and calls for his mom, who's in her chair. She springs up and embraces him. He eats dinner with her now, and they chit-chat some. He dresses her leg wound and tells her she must rest. He wants her to leave this place, but she says this is my house, and she's not leaving. She asks what's bothering him, but he says he's fine. He leaves her some money on the table as he leaves the apartment. Reagan shows her mom the orange bird she's made. Chris finds an Ouija board and asks if she's been playing with it. Reagan shows her how to play with it now. Captain Howdy says her mom can't play. She asks Captain Howdy if he thinks that her mom's pretty. Chris tucks Reagan into bed now, and she asks what she wants to do for her birthday. Sightseeing and going to a movie. She tells her she can bring Burke and jokes about them being married. She tells her that Burke is only just a friend. Father Karras gets some beers and shares one with Father Tom. He says he wants out this job. He needs to be near his mom. Tom says he's the best one they have for the job. He says he can't cut anymore and he needs out because he's unfit, and he thinks he's lost his faith. Chris is on the phone. Chris is on the phone now, bitching at the operator. She's pissed Reagan's dad hasn't called her for her birthday, and I wrote she's going off with all capital letters on the operator. Late that night, Chris gets a call from the director, then notices Reagan right beside her. She said her bed was shaking and she couldn't get to sleep. More noise from the attic, so she lets down the ladder to go up it. She gets a candle and heads up the stairs. She sees the rat traps haven't been, set off yet. She follows the noise, and this candle she has, the fire gets real big, and then Carl scares her saying that there's no rats. All right, Brian, that's the next two scenes I got. What you got on it, man?
Man, she was going off like Nico on a Rob Zombie movie. Let me tell you.
Hey. I don't need to be yelled at, but I'm nobody else again for that.
So, yeah. Anyway, so one thing you usually see in movies like this now is, it's mostly focused on just the family that's being haunted. But one thing that this movie always did that I thought was different, and probably because it was based on the book and they were trying to get so much into it, but there was just as much focus on the lives of Father Karras and Mara and these other storylines, which, again, being controversial, I think that maybe that works in the book, but I don't think, not so much for me in this movie. I mean, all of this stuff with Father Karras here, well, I don't want to say all of it because I'm going to be hypocritical later, but a lot of the stuff isn't really needed, and I don't say that because it's bad. I say it because it's mostly because of the runtime. I mean, it's not necessarily the content, if that makes sense. I think you could get this movie down easily to an hour and 20 or an hour and a half without some of this stuff. And with that said, I mean, I understand that there's a dynamic it adds to the story, and with Karras losing his faith, and wanting out, and it's really a very good story arc, and it's really interesting. But I think that adds more to a book because you can go so much in depth with it than this movie. I think that you could, again, I think that you could cut a lot of the stuff out here. Sidebar, as Nico was reading about Reagan and Chris playing with the Ouija board. Look, anyone who plays with a Ouija board deserves what they get. Look, I'm just saying that.
Say it again for people in the back.
That's my professional opinion on that. And you get what you get when you play with a Ouija board. That's absolutely as stupid as you could get. No offense to our audience, but good luck getting that demon out of your house. Chris McNeil in the book, this is just a little trivia about their ages. They're, she in the book is about 32. Her character in this movie is supposed to be 30 something. Ellen Bernstein was actually over 40, 41 at the time. Father Marin is supposed to be 72 in the book. In the movie, he's 60 or 70 something. Although in real life, despite how he looks, my man Max von Sydow was actually only 44, and was only 3 years older than Chris McNeil character, which my man did not age well. He aged like Patrick Stewart. I'll just go ahead and say that. All in all, I like how this group of scenes, starts building some tension here. Like Dustin mentioned earlier, the lack of musical soundtrack was very noticeable to me, and definitely works. You can definitely tell how much effect that this movie had on movies like The Conjuring, with the violins and the jump scares and stuff. But for some reason, this movie doesn't give me that creepy feeling, that paranormal activity, or even The Conjuring did at the beginning, for example. As it builds up to that climax. At this point, those movies, for example, made me uneasy and uncomfortable, whereas this movie just doesn't, and not yet anyway. And honestly, I think that's because maybe a lot of it had to do with you were getting some tension built up, and then bam, you would cut out of it to go give me some more of the goings on at the priesthood. And I think that maybe you could have done better with the cutting. I think that this is going to be blasphemous too. That I think that if this movie was in better hands, director wise, maybe, and editing wise, that there's a even better movie, I think, to be made here. Despite how classic and awesome that this movie has aged through the years, I think that there is even a better movie out there, in different hands. Just saying.
Yeah, to piggyback off of you, this isn't even Freakin's best movie to me. It would be probably The French Connection, I guess. So, and I know he has, work in documentary and stuff, but I tend to agree with you. It's not so much that his direction necessarily that I don't like, but there's just a lot of fat left in with these scenes. And I don't know if that's him or Blatty or whatever, but I just feel like anything to do that's not with our main characters. Like, I'm okay with a side plot if it connects back to the main plot and we're pushing it forward. But this movie spends a lot of time on multiple side plots, and that's not my kind of movie. The runtime is already bloated, and this set of scenes kind of reminded me just how much longer we have in this fucking movie as I'm watching it. I'm big on character development if I'm interested, but I just don't think the stuff with Karis and even his mom, that's sad and it tugs at your heartstrings and stuff. But again, I just don't think it has anything to do with why we're here to watch this movie. And so I think his character is fleshed out enough without it. But that's just me. And anything going on with the priesthood, whatever. Maybe because I just kind of grew up in that and I don't want to have anything to even do with it, I guess. But that's just preference there. But, the stuff in the attic with the rats, it's really good. Like, I will give them credit here. I think the effects are good. I think the fact that, there's no rats in here, guess everything's okay, is not a very sound mindset to have. Like, nope, probably some shit up there, guys. Demons, raccoons, Bigfoot, wherever the fuck is up there. But I like that scene, just that scene. And I do think it does a good job of building suspense. And I know we've all talked about it, and I said it in my open. The sound, whoever the sound editor is, sound design people, they deserve a lot of credit in this movie. The lack of music throughout the runtime is effective. I know there's some like violins but they let the noises kind of sit. Like, any noise you hear is just there and very staticky almost, and I really like that. But most of this set of scenes just does not do it for me. I mean, it takes, and this is just me personally, it takes me a good 40 minutes plus to actually get into this movie. Because I guess I'm just used to a quick hitter, unless you're The Shining or even Silence of the Lambs and stuff like that. Unless you're one of those really good movies that can pull me in, you've got to hit. A horror movie needs to hit a little bit quicker than this one does, and I just think we're kind of lulling me to sleep. Now it does get better, I will say that, but I just outside of the scene in the attic, I could do without the set of scenes. I really could, and I think Brian, you hit on something that I didn't even think about until right now. That stuff does play better in a book. It's why when you look at the Harry Potter movies, of course you can't fit everything in the book in those movies because those books are like the Holy Bible times 2 half the time. So of course, fleshed out details like that work to keep a book going. But for a movie, how long can you keep my attention span? This 2 hours and 1 minute that you have me for, and this set of scenes just doesn't.
Yeah. So the thing about this set of scenes is I don't want to harp on it a lot like you guys or reiterate what you guys have already said, but this set of scenes has everything that's wrong with this movie in my mind in them. So there's too many things in this film that there's no payoff for. Like I said earlier, we start in Egypt, but there's no real payoff for that. So in this set of scenes, you got the Ouija board. That should have been built up more. Like I would have liked to have seen Chris later start to remember when the Ouija board's brought out and that thing, whatever the devil triangle is that circles the letters, when that thing slides across the board unexpectedly, like I would have liked to have seen her recall that, like, oh yeah. The thing with the attic, that wasn't. I would have liked to have been like, oh yeah, there was rats up there. I thought, but there was no rats, so maybe that was a demon I was hearing. And also, why did we just hear the sound in the attic and nowhere else in the entire, not just house, but the whole film? Like, it was just the attic or her bed or her body that the demon seemed to be in. It's just too many things, too many loose ends that could have had great payoffs that weren't tied up neatly. Now, the one thing that I will say about this set of scenes is I did appreciate how they did more character development with Karis and Reagan and Chris. Like you see the relationship between Reagan and Chris, and and the absent father, Karis with his mom. I actually like that scene because that comes into play. I like Karis is what I was talking about. His character arc is great in this film. He's on the rocks. He's not certain about himself. He's going through this tough time with his mother's issues and then her demise, and then the vulnerability that he has in the while the exorcism scene is going on. His character arc is the best in the film. So I appreciate the scene with his mother here, and because there's callbacks to it later in the film. So I appreciate that. However, another thing that went undone as far as should have had a better payoff was I read that the intention was behind Captain Howdy was that Captain Howdy was meant to be a play on the name Howard, which was the girl's dad. And the demon was using that vulnerability to exploit Reagan and to get her to let him in because, she wanted this father figure, this presence. She was eager for I guess, a man's presence in her life. So she let Captain Howdy in. That was not explained at all. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's one of the things I read when I was researching the movie. I came across that, and that makes a lot of sense. Why didn't they exploit it more? Why didn't they explore it more? So that's the thing. You got so much stuff that you could have cut out, and then the things that you snuck in that could have been drawn out into longer scenes, you just abandoned. So that's my whole beef with this movie, is just the choice on what was cut out, what was left in, what was not taken further.
Very well put.
Yep. All right, now the next two scenes is where I think some stuff start to pick up for you guys. Now we hear church bells and we see a priest carrying flowers into the sanctuary. He sees one of the statues have been vandalized with horns protruding out of the private areas. Reagan is in the hospital getting a shot, and I wrote getting what looks like an EKG done, and she sees that demon face flash. A doctor does more tests while Chris waits in the lobby. She rips a thermometer out her mouth and acts weird walking around and humming. The doctor gives Chris a prescription for Ritalin, and Chris expresses concern. She asks if she should take her daughter to a psychiatrist, but he says to wait and try the medicine first. He asks if Reagan uses obscenity. She says no, but he says that she did during the examination. I don't even know if I should even say it, what she said. Keep your fingers away from my GD cunt, Reagan yelled at the doctor, and Chris is in disbelief. Father Karras and his uncle get to the mental hospital to visit his mother. The nurse leads Karras to his mother's bed, but other patients bombard him. Father Karras gets to her bed, and she has tears running down her face. He says he's going to get her out of here, and she cries as she resists. And now he's in the gym, and he's hitting a punching bag to release his stress. That night at Chris's house, there's a big party going on. Chris asks another priest about Karras and learns of his mother's death. In the kitchen, Bert insults a butler who then grabs his throat and laughs in Chris's face. Chris checks on Reagan, who is in bed. Bert, he leaves the house a drunken mess. Chris and a group of guests circle the piano and enjoy some singing together as the priest plays. Reagan walks downstairs and tells the astronaut, "You're going to die up there." And then she pisses all over the floor. Chris takes her upstairs and blames her illness. She bathes her and asks why she did that. Reagan asks what's wrong with me. She tells her it's just nerves and to take your pills. Chris goes to leave, then hears Reagan yelling and goes into her room and sees her bed shaking violently, and she jumps on the bed to comfort Reagan. All right, Brian, go ahead, man.
I'll ask Dustin this because I know he watched the same version I did. Was that part about Reagan in the telling that doctor to stay away from her cunt and stuff like Nico just said? Was that in your cut? I don't remember seeing that at all in mine.
I remember her lashing out at the doctor, but I don't remember that
Yes,
specific.
but not saying that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't.
I think that she called him a motherfucker. So she said
Right.
something.
Yeah, she said something, but I don't think it was GD cunt in the HBO Max one because that's
Yeah,
the
it
same
was
one
not.
that I watched too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I don't think so either. It didn't stand out to me that I remembered that anyway. Um, okay, so in another edition of Brian's personal shit nobody cares about, but he's going to say anyway, the actor that plays Burt Dennings, Jack McGowan, bears a very striking, uncanny resemblance to my late grandfather. Just, it was weird for me to see, actually, whenever I saw that on screen. He looks very much so like them. And speaking of him, it always cracks me up in older movies like this, where, for example, Burke's following that dude around, antagonizing him about being a Nazi, but like when people get mad, they don't punch each other. They go straight to this like straight up choke, and it's not even a choke hold. It's just like some grumpy. It is something that always reminds me of grumpier old men with like Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon, like just I'm gonna choke. Yeah, I'm so mad at you. I'm gonna choke you. I don't know that part cracked me up. And Mike touched on this earlier. It's hard to not think of the opening to Scary Movie 2 when Reagan pees on this rug at the party, and which honestly I hate. I really truly hate that. And it's like, Mike, you hate that Scream, and I agree too. Scream took such a hit because of the Scary Movie franchise. Like I hate that this pops in my head,
Yeah, me
and I
too.
know that
So do I.
I know that we've talked about this before, but I love those first two Scary movies.
Me too.
I agree. But what they've done to at least me, and I think a lot of people's just psyche, that when you watch the real one, the real version, I really do hate that it pops in my head because in this movie in particular, if you try to just shove that out, like this is really where this movie starts to get a little bit disturbing.
Right.
And I don't want to be thinking and laughing about some parody of it. Honestly, I mean, you see things like this, and what you see later with Reagan, and that you just don't see in movies, even still to this day. And it just definitely it makes me uncomfortable to to hear. That's why I didn't trigger with me about Reagan saying that, because seeing her speak like that, it's just, to me, Reagan is such an adorable, like likable little girl, and it's just hard for me to watch her descent into this. And I think that honestly, that's what makes this movie so. The fact that it affects people, and in me, that it affects them psychologically like that. To watch that, I think that that's what makes this movie stand out so much too. And obviously, this is the first of many times that we see the bed shaking. But just another little trivia, a little tidbit. Linda Blair apparently like injured her back to the extent that it's actually hindered her, most of her life, from scenes like this one, with her shaking on the bed. All in all, like Nico said, it really starts to kick in a little bit here.
Yeah, I like that we get a little more intense. At least stuff is happening in this set of scenes. Um, I just want to say I think Linda Blair here is great. Like the nomination that she didn't get, she definitely deserved. I just wish it had, 1973 hadn't been so uptight, at the Academy or whatever. Because I think she really starts to show her chops here. Really great. The scene when she lashes out is well done, and I don't even remember the exact quote in the copy that I watched, but I remember being very like, whoa, like this is probably, I want to say, my third time watching this film. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe my second in full. And I remember, just turning my head, whoa, like that little girl just said that. And that's still unsettling all these years later. Don't get me wrong. And, even the stuff. So you get a little bit of a bloated scene with the hanging out and everybody's kind of at the hotel party and stuff like that. You get a little bit of a bloat there, but it leads to something that you mentioned, Brian, which is very unnerving with the girl. You're going to die up there. She pees on the floor. And I do hate that, of course, Scary Movie 2 does pop in my mind anytime I watch this. Anytime I think of The Exorcist or see a scene from The Exorcist, my mind goes to that Scary Movie 2, partially because, one, I 99% sure I watched it first, but two, because I'm a sucker for a good parody, and they do it pretty well. We talked about that in the Scary Movie 2, but when you see the real version and you can kind of place yourself back then, I can see how unsettling this would be for a movie-going audience. Like, I will say, as much as I'm not a huge fan of this movie, the character's story of Reagan is very hard, very difficult to get through because she's seems like a really good child and really sweet kid, and to watch her kind of start to deteriorate in front of your own eyes in any movie is difficult. And this set of scenes kind of emphasizes that. And I'll say, all these years later, the bed shaking scene is still really, really well done. The effects look good. The camera work is good. The way they let the sounds kind of linger, and I said that already a lot, I know, but the acting there from both people is just really good. And this is the set of scenes that kind of get you emotionally involved in this movie now, because it's a story. It becomes less about wherever they are, Iraq or Egypt or wherever, and less about the priesthood and more about a mother and a daughter. And that is where I think the heart of this movie is, and why it freaks so many people out, more so than even just the demon. Like, I feel like all of that stuff is almost secondary to what really made this movie emotionally touch people and scare them so much. And I think this set of scenes kind of sets that up really well. So as far as the meat of this movie, this is kind of where the movie begins. Like, all that other stuff, you can kind of take it out. This is where the movie begins for me, and I can at least get interested in the story, whether I'm a believer in this stuff or not. At least from this point on, it's not necessarily a bad movie. It's just not my cup of tea, but I like this set of scenes a lot.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. This is where Reagan's behavior begins becoming so erratic. It's to the point that the audience knowing what's coming, because, like me, I'd never seen this movie, but I knew what it was about, and I knew what was gonna happen to Reagan. This is where it really makes the audience uncomfortable and anxious to just watch it unfold. The thing about it is, now I do wish that when they get down to when she gets into the living room, they're playing the piano. I do wish they were playing Mystical, Shake Your Ass, but that's okay.
Exactly. That's one thing I do wish was real.
only slight disappointment, but the thing about this scene is, I do like the foreshadowing. You're going to die up there. Then we find out what happens later. However, I didn't care about Burke at all as a character. He's supposed to be the central character, and his demise is supposed to be something that really shakes me and gets to me, but I just don't care about him, and this is because they didn't make me care about him. They spent too much money, too much time investing in these storylines all over the place and these characters all over the place to where Burke just really felt like a tertiary character to me that I didn't care about. Now, I will say, though, that this is where the action's picking up to the point, though, that I'm very much so invested in what's going to happen, because it's only a matter of time before, okay, we're going to get the head spinning, we're going to get the green puke, we're going to get the gnarly makeup, all that. So it's coming. So you're on the edge of the seat waiting for it. Like you said, Mike, even if you don't care about this type of movie, you're at least invested in the storyline because you know what the payoff's going to be. But it's just, up until now, it's been a slow burn. And honestly, I agree with you. This is really where the movie begins to me. It's like, I don't know. It's like, right to me, this movie is like a roller coaster. And I don't mean how that metaphor is typically used, like where it's up and down and throwing you for loops. What I mean is a literal roller coaster when you're riding it and you get on it, and it's one of the old wooden roller coasters that has the chain that pulls you to the top.
Oh,
and that chain just feels like it's taken forever to get to the top. And you're seeing all kinds of the amusement park that you don't necessarily care about at the moment, but it's nice to see the view. And then the roller coaster, you hit the climax, and when you're on the way down the hill, it's too short of a ride. That's how I feel. On the way up to the climax here, I'm seeing all this shit in the movie that I don't really care about, but it's cool to see. It looks nice and all this. And then once we hit this point, the rest of the movie flies by to me. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
That's a perfect metaphor.
It really is. You kind of just described Splash Mountain.
Yes, exactly.
I wasn't expecting to hear a Splash Mountain reference tonight, but
Zippity doo dah.
Well, Reagan made her own Splash Mountain in the living room there.
Oh my God! I'm glad you went with the living room, because I thought you was about to go a different route with that. I'm glad you chose not.
Whoa!
But I couldn't say what I said. All right.
Moving on. Father Dyer checks on Karras in his apartment. He's very torn up over his mother. He's drinking and smoking heavily. He says this behavior sets a bad example. He says he should have been there for his mother. He leaves after putting him to bed. And now we see this amulet falling and Father Karras calling for his mother in the city. He runs towards her as she walks back into the subway station. The amulet drops and we see Reagan screaming and resisting as she gets an injection. Karras prays and leads the service now. The doctor lights up a cig and tells Chris she has a disturbance in the chemical reactions in her brain. He blames the bed shaking on a muscular spasm. And Chris says that wasn't it. A lesion in the temporal lobe has affected all of her behavior. He says all they have to do is remove the scar. The nurses move Reagan onto a table and get her ready for more testing. She gets an injection to the throat and blood shoots out as she winces in pain and discomfort. They do a CAT scan of her brain and the doctor sees no signs. The doctors go to Reagan's house and see her bouncing on the bed, and she looks possessed and yells. This is the scene where she yells, "Fuck me," over and over to them. She slaps the man and they hold her down and tranquilize her. The doctors exit her room and say she's heavily sedated and will sleep through tomorrow. She asks what caused that, and they blame it on her pathological state. I wrote, Chris isn't buying it anymore as she goes off on them. Another intense test on her brain, and they come back normal. They ask if Chris keeps any drugs in the house, and she says no. She cries as she tells the doctor of the plans she and Reagan had, and he says it may be time for a psychiatrist. Chris gets home and sees a mob of people and emergency responders outside. She goes inside and answers the phone, and the lights are flashing, and then she calls out for Sharon. She sees Reagan's window is open again and it's freezing in the room. She covers Reagan back up, and Sharon gets back home and tells her Burke was watching her. Chuck comes in and tells Chris the news that Burke is dead. Says he must have been drunk and fell out the window and broke his neck. Chris weeps and shakes, and now we see Reagan. I don't think you guys saw this. Now this is when Reagan does her little spider walk down the stairs, bleeding from her mouth. All right, Brian, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I know you guys said this about the last group, but in my notes, like, this is the group of scenes to me where I feel like, using Dustin's analogy, that the roller coaster really starts going down for me. And the movie really starts to get good. And I'll say that about a demonic possession movie. This movie in parts is very good. And this is where I can really, these set of scenes is where I can really see why that this movie has stood the test of time. You starting with that this is the scene I was talking about earlier with Reagan in the hospital. Just hearing the little girl who's really, she hasn't really started to look terrible, and look and get that demonic look to her. She still just looks like a sweet little girl, that just is maybe a little bit tired. But hearing, her say, like this is what I remembered earlier of her calling the doctor a fucking bastard, and spits on the doctor. This is where it really really starts to make me feel uncomfortable. But then boom, you get the damn bed scene, with seeing her on that bed with her eyes rolling in the back of her head saying fuck me. I mean, I know you get it's just a precursor to the fuck me scene that we get later. That's just like, you're speechless watching. But, this is the effects, especially like with her eyes were on the back of the head and the effects later, they're tremendous, for today's standards, much less back in the early 70s. So, it's just, again, a very, very well done movie, especially at that time. A little tidbit about the voice actress, Mercedes McCambridge, we mentioned earlier. She provided the voice of the demon. She insisted on swallowing raw eggs, and chain smoking to alter her vocalizations. The actress, who she had problems with alcohol abuse in the past, and so she wanted to actually drink whiskey, as she knew alcohol would distort her voice even more. Talk about a just dedication to a character and to a craft. She wanted to create this crazed state of mind for her character. And she was actually giving up her sobriety, which is so important to some people. But she insisted that her priest, her personal priest, be present to counsel her during their courting. And in some behind the scenes fuck up, there's a lot of fucked up stuff that happened behind the scenes, and that I don't know, I don't get into it too much. The other guys might, which I hope so, but there's a lot, and this is some of it, where at Friedkin's direction, McCambridge was also bound to a chair with pieces of torn sheets, like at her necks, arms, and wrists, and legs and feet, to get like a more realistic sound of a demon struggling against its restraints. I mean, McCambridge later recalled the experience as like, one of quote unquote horrific rage. So, while Friedkin admitted that her performance, as well as the extremes which the actress put herself through, terrified even the director. I mean, this is to me like some behind the scenes stuff that's like, wow, when you kind of read and hear some of this stuff. And yeah, my cut didn't have that crab walk, but I did go on YouTube and watch it, because it was once I figured out that it wasn't in it, because behind the scenes, like our notes cut off at crab walk, and I was like, wait a minute, I didn't get a crab walk. And that's where I wanted to go see that, because that crab walk is always something that's disturbing to me in every movie I see it in. I mean, now it's not done the best in this one, and I think that it's due to the time period it was made, which is good and bad in some places. But I actually first saw, I think, the crab walk in The Ring or The Grudge, because the first time I watched this, I don't think I had the director's cut either, so I don't even remember it being in that one. So when I think of the crab walk, it's none of this movie. That's why I wanted to watch it. But there's something like inhuman and unnatural about that adds such an effect to me. I think that the other versions, like that one I watched, and apparently the other three guys watched too, I think that it misses out on it, without it. Despite the fact that it's not done the best here. And but to me it was an odd choice too, watching that clip, to not have much of a reaction to it from Chris. Which I think only Nico can really. I went and watched the clip, but it's almost like she just kind of blew it off, and then it cuts to something else, which to me is like another complaint I have when you're really building momentum in this movie, and then bam, you cut off instead of build on it. So
Yeah, before you go, Mike, I was going to say the crab spider walk, whatever you want to call it, is kind of pointless, because she just does it real fast and the scene's over. Like,
right.
does she pass out and you'll carry her back up there? Does she attack them? Like, what the hell happened after that?
No,
So,
yeah.
I mean, I like y'all, like Dustin has said multiple times throughout this review, it does something that has no payoff.
Right.
It's just a creepy visual, but it's too fast. They do it. It's like you're watching it in like 64 times, like you're fast forward on the Blu-ray player or something. So yeah, it's not necessary. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So a lot of this is exactly what I talked about in my open, where I'm more interested in the filmmaking part of this movie than I am the actual movie. And don't get me wrong, I mentioned it in our last set of scenes where I think this is at least a good story. It's very, I can't find the right word for it because I keep using the same two, unsettling and unnerving, but it is that when you hear the words, the language being spoken out of a child's mouth, it's it can be done right in a comedy, but in this setting, it's very creepy, it's very weird, and you don't expect it. I've only seen it a couple times, so I forget that this is the kind of thing that Reagan is saying. I think the scene and where she's being cut on and all that, the effects there are so good, and it's kind of mind blowing to me that this can be done in what 1973, and 9 to 10 years later they're doing movies like The Poltergeist, and even before that with The Omen, where the effects are not this. And I don't know budget, and I know technology. They thought, oh, we can just digitally put this here and use wires and it not be as good. But this is the kind of stuff that this movie, for a lot of people, has stood the test of time, and even for me, as far as filmmaking goes, stands the test of time. Where everything's practical, except for a few things that get added back in with the demon's face and stuff later on in the movie. But outside of those later additions digitally, this stuff is practically being done, and it looks great. The blood shooting out, being cut on, and being strapped down, and all the stuff, the effects with the eyes rolling back in the head. Hell, that looks better than the Undertaker does it. So again, it's just this. I like this part of the movie for that reason. And again, some of it is a little. I wouldn't say the word is gratuitous or over the top, but it's just not for me in my investment. But I do appreciate the acting that's taking place. I appreciate the effects and how it's being done. Like you said, Brian, the behind the scenes stuff of this movie, and there's a freaking whole Wondery podcast about everything about this movie leading up to it that I listened to a couple years ago, and that's what got me interested in the behind the scenes part. There's documentary after documentary about it, and I recommend, after you listen to us, of course, go check those out. But this is the set of scenes where I'm like, okay, at the very least, we're getting a strongly made film, because the people there care enough to make it a really good film. And this is the set of scenes that does that for me. Again, there's some bloat here too. Don't get me wrong, but I love the effort that went in to make these scenes look as realistic as a demon being, taking over a little child can look, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot of notes on this. I'll just say that, here's another set of scenes rather, that furthers Karras' story, and I actually really appreciate that. Like I said, I really respect his character arc and his storyline in this film, because I really empathize with him. Like, you can see he does a great job acting and portraying the struggles that he's going with internally as well as externally, the physical struggles that he's going on, that he goes through later in the film. So Karras's portion of this set of scenes was the highlight to me, other than the obvious stuff, the effects and everything. I did write down in my notes, I just love how everyone in the 70s smoked. Like,
The doctor, the psychiatrist, everybody. It's a fucking Netflix show, pal.
They're at the fucking, and I mean, it's a sign of the times. It's hilarious to me to look back on things from this era, or when you watch the show Mad Men, obviously is another one. Just everybody smoked back then. It just cracks me up. But I like this. So this movie, like I said, has a lot of slow burn. There's a lot of drawn out things that there's not really payoff for. There's not, it just feels like it's really drawn out, and it's too long. One of the things that I really, really appreciate the most about this film, though, is I like the slow burn with the possession conclusion. I like how many steps that Chris went through to try to figure out what's wrong with Reagan. And even after the doctor saying essentially, I don't know, is she's just fucked up in the head.
Right.
Even after that, there was still no. It still took a while to get to the. All right, let's try this possession. Let's try this exorcism. Let's get the priest in. I really like that because that seems very realistic to me. I couldn't imagine if I had a kid going through some crazy shit. I couldn't imagine that one of my first thoughts would be, let's call a priest. So I thought that was very well done. My word, when I watched this movie the first time, I could not get over how vulgar it was. Like that was just, it was like I think that Rob Zombie got every bit of inspiration for his script writing and his screenplays from listening to Reagan talk to the priest and Reagan talk while she's possessed. Holy shit, it's vulgar. But and I mean that it's vulgar for 2020 standards, let alone 1973. So anyway, I don't have anything else on these set of scenes that you guys haven't already touched on. So I'll throw it back to you, Nico.
Reagan is now with the psychiatrist getting asked questions like, is there someone inside of you? She says sometimes, and I wrote she looks really sleepy and like run down. She says that she's afraid. He stands behind her and asks to speak to the person inside her. She begins to moan and roar and grabs him by the crotch, and she drops the man. She's grabbed and restrained by another doctor. Father Karras is running around the track now and is greeted by Lieutenant William. Says he looked like a boxer. Karras says that he looks like Paul Newman. He asks about the director Burke. He asks what he knows on the subject of witchcraft and tells the lieutenant about a paper he wrote on it. He tells Father Karras that Burke was found with his head twisted completely around. William says it was witchcraft. It was a witchcraft-like kill. He asks Karras for help one more time, and he says it was the Dominicans. I felt like that scene was kind of a little long too, with around the track. Reagan is convulsing, and face is cut up now. A group of doctors tell Chris she seems to be possessed. She yells at them and cries. A doctor says one outside chance of a cure is an exorcism. They explain the ritual of driving out the unwanted spirit. They get home and carry Reagan inside. Chris finds a cross underneath Reagan's pillow, and we see the lieutenant looking at the stairs where Burke died and finds that stone figure similar like Father Marin had. It might be the same one, I don't know. Chris asks Carl if he was the one who put the cross in there. He tells her that he didn't do it. Chris asks the rest of her staff if they put the cross in her room. And now the lieutenant shows up. He has coffee with Chris, now asking her questions. She tells him that she was heavily sedated while Burke was here. He tells her the fall wouldn't cause the injuries he had. He believes he was killed by a powerful man and was pushed from the window. He asks of any potential visitors while Reagan was alone. She gets him more coffee as he notices Reagan's art. She tells the detective when Reagan is better, she'll ask her about Burke. He now asks for an autograph for his daughter, but he was just joking. It's for him, actually. He says he'll come back when she's better and leaves. Chris hears more yelling and goes into Reagan's room. And this is, another iconic scene. She's stabbing herself in the crotch with the crucifix, screaming, oh, man, I don't even know if I want to say it. Let Jesus fuck you. And there's blood all over her face. She shoves Chris's face into her crotch. Lick me, she yells, and slams her door shut while trying to crush her with a dresser. Her head twists around and says, do you know what she did? As Chris screams. All right, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so what Dustin was talking about earlier with wanting to have more, character development with Burke, and not so much care more about him, but care more about his character. It's actually in something that I didn't realize, but it's implied that Reagan was being molested by Burke, and you, this is more obvious, obviously, in the book, but I think it would have added a lot more dynamic here in this film, and maybe there's no maybe, it was absolutely enough in this movie seeing a kid go through what Reagan did anyway, plus what Nico just read, but it's definitely something, adding that whole molestation arc, or at least playing it up some. I mean, that can invoke some like very powerful feelings, like, especially, well, in me, in my response as like an audience member watching it, knowing that. And I know it's kind of implied with, oh, he was in there watching her or whatever, but I never caught on until this viewing, and actually when I read it, it to me, I think if they would have played a little bit more, played that up a little bit more, I mean, I think it would have added a lot more, especially in regards to this whole murder investigation subplot, which, again, I think that this is definitely, in the category of something I really don't feel like really goes anywhere of substance. And, I and I had that as a complaint, but I understood later as like I read on IMDb where it pointed out that it would actually create a legal conundrum, with Reagan still being investigated for a murder. So, I understand, I guess, why that really wasn't played upon so much, but maybe add that other arc. I think that would have been a lot better here. Then we get that whole famous crucifixion scene, which, good lord, I mean, it's just the sound effects that they added every time the cross like hits her. It sounds almost like a shovel hitting dirt or something. It makes me cringe, and it's just so out of nowhere. I mean, this entire scene is just, it's uncomfortable is just the perfect word for me to just to even watch that. And talking about, I was about to talk about the iconic head turning scene, but this, for a movie that, this is a perfect time, I think, to talk about this. For a movie that like doesn't shy away from shocking you with all the shit that Reagan says and does, and it shows you that cross hitting her and bleeding and stuff, like, it very much so shies away from like deaths. I mean, you don't get to see him go out the window and die. You kind of just see the after effects of it. And I wonder why, what creative choice that was. I mean, why can you show the stuff that we get to see, but you don't want to see, you didn't show the murders and the deaths. So that's a complaint I kind of had about this movie too. We obviously get that iconic head turning scene. Speaking of that death, so that scene is just so groundbreaking. Like even for now, much less back then. I mean, but unless you've read the book, which I have not, and you may not know, which I did not. But that when Reagan turns her head all the way around the first time, and says that, "Do you know what she did, your cunting daughter?" Like the demon's like actually imitating Burke, who fell from her window. Like, and that whole head turning represents how Burke's head was like turned completely around. Again, that's not something I caught just watching it, and maybe I'm just dumb, or my sheer lack of times like seeing this movie at an age where I could actually really invest in the movie and pay attention, a lot. But I think that maybe that would have maybe benefited from further explanation, unless I was just, dumb and didn't catch it, and everybody else did. But and maybe that's because it didn't show, him dead with his neck turned around like that. It was just kind of said, well, at least it didn't in the version that I watched. Again, probably the most, I don't want to say iconic set of scenes. I'm going to go with memorable set of scenes in this entire movie, right here.
Yeah, I have that wrote in my notes here where I felt like, one, I didn't care about Burke, which I know that Dustin kind of already talked about, and you hit on a point that why I don't care about Burke is because they didn't really give him anything to do, and the fact that it's implied that he may have been molesting Reagan doesn't do enough for me without going into it some. And so, when that kill happens, you don't see it, and that does bring it down a notch because this movie goes for a lot. And I'm not asking for kill after kill after kill like it's a Friday the 13th sequel, but give me something to kind of make me at least care about the fact that this guy just died. And I don't mind the murder investigation side plot. If there's any side plot that bothers me the least, it's this one. Because I do think you get the father involved and, the weird looking detective, and that interaction is kind of funny, post jog, and his head was completely turned around. He's asking him about witchcraft and all that other stuff. Why he immediately went to witchcraft and not, I don't know, guy fell off a fucking building, his head can turn all the way around. It happens. Science. But, witchcraft is fine too, I guess, if you're a policeman. But so to me, the most disturbing scene in this entire film is the crucifixion scene, and it's there's that word again. It's unsettling. even now, all these years later, the sounds, the noises, the words being said, by a child, and I know it's a voice actor, but still, it's coming out of Linda Blair's mouth, or looks like it is, and it is it's so off-putting. And I know that that's the intention, and they nail that. I will give them credit. Even me watching this movie now for the third time, and I watched some of it today as well, so 3.5 times. That is an unsettling, just a scene I don't care to watch again. Like when I said at the beginning, I don't think I'm ever going to watch this movie again. This scene is part of the reason, and I can see a lot. Like I've seen a lot. Okay, I mean, now most movies I won't turn off unless you're a Serbian film. Then I turn that motherfucker off very quickly because fuck that stupid movie. But this is it's gross. It's not over the line though. I see what they're doing. They're really showing the descent into madness for the character, but they're also showing that the demon, the devil himself, is in control. And something that I'm not 100% sure we touched on a ton, but when the interaction once the demon is kind of in control, and I know we're not quite there yet, but just the voice talking as the demon, it's very, very well done. So again, masterclass in horror movie, but some of this stuff is just not my cup of tea. It's not my favorite stuff, but this scene itself, it gets me like it, and not a lot of scenes can get me. There's a couple Saw scenes that get me. There's a couple of other Silence of the Lambs can get me in a way with Buffalo Bill and stuff. It's kind of out there. This is one of those scenes that the few times I've seen it, and every time I forget it's coming, and then it happens, so again, a very memorable set of scenes, like you said, Brian. But if I never watch this one again, I'm okay with that.
Before you go, Dustin, Mike, you touched on it. The dubbing of the demon voice over Reagan's
It's great.
Lips is perfect. Not one time in the entire movie did I see any sort of mistiming or whatever. It's perfect almost. And it's just very well done.
Yeah, I completely agree. I actually had that in my notes for this set of scenes.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Just how well that was done, and the effects, how well everything is done in this scene. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is the least amount of notes that I have, because I don't know if it's because I'm sucked into the film and I'm watching at this point more than I should be, I guess, observing and taking notes, but or maybe it's just things are happening and I don't feel the need to take scenes or take notes because, like I said, I should have cared a lot more about Burke's death. I wish they would have potentially explored that subplot between Burke and Reagan. That would make it make sense, I guess, why she had the vendetta against him. But then again, it wasn't her that killed him; it was the demon. So why did it matter? I don't know. And then the scenes with the crucifix and this is what I was talking about. This movie is just vulgar as fuck, but very well done. The effects are great. The makeup looks great. The acting, the voice acting, everything in this set of scenes, everything from here on out, I'm like all on board for. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. I don't have anything monumental about this set of scenes.
And Nico,
that you guys haven't heard.
Nico, before you go, Dustin, you made a great point. I've been meaning to talk about it, and we're going to get to the scenes where you can really see it. But the makeup on Linda Blair is still fantastic. I don't care what anybody says. And it's the little nuances over the course of the next 35, 40 minutes of the movie where it doesn't really change, but it does at the same time. The wounds get a little bigger. She gets a little more purple. Like the progression of that makeup, it's just so fucking good. Like,
great.
Yeah, props to them. Props to them. All those years ago for getting it right, it still holds up.
Our Cross meets Chris and gets a cigarette from him. The two chat and walk, and he tells her he's heard from Father Dyer about the party, but not about Reagan. They chat some, then she asks, how do you go about getting an exorcism? He says those just don't happen anymore due to, they diagnose those things as like mental illnesses now. He's not met one priest who does them, but she has someone close to her who needs one. He says it would make it worse, and the church has to investigate. She begs for his help as a priest. They get back to her house, and she leads him to Reagan's room. We hear screech-like noises, and Karas enters the room. She has vomit on her chest and looks evil as she's bound to the bed. She says her name's not Reagan. He asks, "Where's Reagan?" as she speaks in different voices. The demon says his mother is in there too. He asks what's her maiden name, and this is where she pukes the green vomit on him. Father Cross is in the basement looking at the artwork as Chris irons his clothes. He still says he can't do it. He doesn't know the evidence the church would need. Father Cross says that 6 months of observation in a hospital is what she needs. She says that's not Reagan and yells to be told that an exorcism would not help her. He asks about if Reagan knew about him coming over or his mother's passing, and then he walks away. We see the lieutenant sitting in the car watching Chris's house. Karas is listening to recordings of Reagan's call to her daddy. He leads communion now. He's now in Reagan's room and records their conversation. She opens a drawer with her powers. She begins to speak Latin to him, then laughs. She says she'll stay in Reagan until she dies rotting in the earth. He splashes holy water on her and she cries, "It burned." We hear several voices and sounds come from her. He asks who she is. He goes downstairs and asks Chris where the father is and that she should tell him about this. He tells of how she reacted to holy water, but it was only tap water. And she says Reagan was the one, and Chris says that Reagan was the one who killed Bert. All right, and the next two scenes I got are the ending. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, this Chris and Karis conversation, I don't know, it cracked me up. It was just out of the blue where she's like almost Chappelle show Tyrone Bigum's like where she's like, where can I get some more of those exorcisms? And he's just like, I beg your pardon. I don't know, that little conversation cracked me up. And again, I'm not an actor. I'm just some idiot with a microphone criticizing someone's performance. But always in the past, I will give you credit whenever I feel like, crying or showing, just emotional exhaustion is really well done. And because it's so hard to do. So I think that I can point out both ways. And I don't feel like Ellen Burstyn's performance here with Father Karras where she was crying and just I don't think that it was very well done. I did not buy her performance. I'll say that. With that said, on the flip side, Jason Miller's performance in here, where he's just in there with the demon was just tremendous. Like, the line about his mother, I really felt like that really hit hard. And you know what? I told you I was going to be hypocritical later, and this is it because, and I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth basically because if you didn't have like the build up with Father Karras that I told you to cut out earlier, if you didn't have that, it wouldn't, that line wouldn't have hit so hard. So maybe you don't need all of the backstory. Maybe you just need some of it, or maybe I'm a fucking idiot that I don't know what I'm talking about. So, which is probably more than likely. But, in fact, here actually is where Reagan projectile vomits. Father Karras only required one take because the whole famous pea soup was intended to hit Miller in the chest, but the plastic tubing misfired, hitting him in the face. So his reaction of shock and disgust and just being over kind of pissed off there for a minute while wiping it away was genuine. And Miller admitted, in an interview later that he was very angered by this mistake. I don't have anything else on this group of scenes, but just to say again, the scenes with Jason Miller in this movie to me are my favorite, and I think the best done. He's by far to me the best actor or actress in this movie.
I feel like this. I'm about to maybe contradict myself a little bit, but to me, this set of scenes is probably okay. Not necessarily a contradiction of myself, but as far as the non-fantastical stuff goes, like the non-demon stuff, the non-possession stuff, I like a lot of the conversation stuff here between the mom and the father. I like a lot of that because we're getting to the nuts and bolts of this story. It's a mom that just is she's out of hope, or she's on her last leg. Like, this is it. Like, whatever it takes to find out what's wrong with Reagan, I'm going to do, whether that is an exorcism or whatever. And as much as I've agreed with Brian and Dustin and Nico, for that matter, on this movie, I'm going to disagree a little bit on the acting here because I think both do their part to at least a believable standard. Like I believe that that the mom is upset. I believe that Father Karras wants to help, whether that be from a priest standpoint or a psychiatrist standpoint. Like where however, I believe that interaction, and so I like a lot of that. And this is what I was talking about in the last set of scenes. Is we talked about the dubbing of the voiceover here, but this is where it really shines. Is this interaction where Karras is just talking to Reagan, but he's really talking to the demon, and this is just conversation, but it's so eerie sounding and creepy coming. That voice coming out of that being is so creepy, and it's really all I had about this set of scenes because again, this set of scenes is a little more grounded, so I'm a little more into this. But my favorite part is the dubbing, where they just get it so right, and this is where they start to really use the makeup to show that the demon is fully taking over Reagan's body at this point, and it's really well done. And I just love the conversation part of this, where it's creepy to see Karras talk to the demon. It's done really well. It's really interesting how they pulled it off, and even the projectile vomiting, which again, one of those things that Scary Movie 2 kind of ruined because Natasha Lyonne and her character just do it forever, and it's funny. And so I can't help but go to that, and I can't help but think of split pea soup and all that stuff. But again, I don't think it's done bad here. If I was going to nitpick the effects, it would probably be the split pea soup, but that's probably only because I know what it is. If I had never heard that before, it still looks pretty good all these years later. So I think it plays well to the descent into being the devil himself. And I don't hate the set of scenes. It's a little bit of a takedown because we're about to kick it back up here at the end, about to go crazy with it. So I like it enough.
Yeah, I like the hesitance that he shows when she's like, "You got to help me on this," and he's like, "I just don't know." But then when he comes over to finally help, I do. Man, this Jason Miller, he killed this role. I love the scene in the bedroom, the whole scene. You could tell that you can see the trepidation in his face the whole time. Not just because it's not even because he's scared of the demon at this point. I think that does come later. But at this scene, you can tell he's just scared because he doesn't want to open up Pandora's box. His faith has already been wavering. That's been cleared the whole time we've been around him in this film. And so you can tell like his nerves are working him right here. And I thought that's just a masterclass in acting. But I do love how, he's in there. He's got the tape recorder, asking her the questions. She's speaking 6 different languages. And I love how he throws the holy water on her and then walks out. And it's like, yeah, the holy water really fucked her up, but it wasn't holy water. And he's like, nah, it's not a demon. Like, fam, you saw that shit. You heard that shit. You can't tell me just because.
Hey, Dustin, I have a question for you, and maybe I took this movie the wrong way, but is that the demon fucking with him, right? I don't know. Like, I felt like
that's how I took it.
Yeah, I took it as the demon was manipulating him there. Like, oh, it hurts. Like trying to, because I think the demon knows that's not holy water. And I think that he's trying to convince him that it's not a real demon, that this little girl is just crazy. That's the way I took it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next, because we get that later when Marin tells him, don't have a conversation with the demon. The demon will tell you the truth, but it'll also manipulate the truth and try to use it against you. And so that's how I took this, because the demon knew that wasn't holy water, probably knew what he was doing here. So he just wanted to fuck with him. The demon wanted to fuck with him a little bit here and try to make him look like he doesn't know what he's doing, lose some of his credibility. That's exactly how I took it. And so, yeah, basically this set of scenes, all it does is highlight and showcase Jason Miller and the badass that he is as an actor.
Alrighty, gentlemen, this is the ending. Give me a minute because there's a lot going on in this ending. Cross plays back the recordings and finds out it's English in reverse. He gets a phone call and heads to Chris's house. Sharon leads him to Reagan's room, and it's freezing cold in there. And Reagan has "help me" protruding out of her stomach area, like it looks like whelps or something. Karras tells the head priest about it, and he says it may be best to have another man help with experience. Another father recommends Father Marin to help. That night, a cab drops off Father Marin at Chris's house for, that iconic image from the poster. We see a close-up of Reagan's green, scary eyes. Marin enters and is greeted by a loud groan from Reagan. He tells Karras the game plan, and he asks if he'd like to hear the background of the case. Marin holds his cross necklace and prays, and then Chris brings him some coffee, and then she puts some brandy in it. Marin tells Karras the demon is a liar, but will use some truth to attack them. Marin says there is only one personality. The two priests enter the room and set up. And I wrote, Reagan shit talks them, and he splashes holy water on her. They recite the Lord's Prayer. Reagan rocks side to side, groaning as they pray. Your mother sucks cock in hell, Karras, she says. The bed shakes and jumps as Marin prays. More holy water and praying. The bed levitates now as Karras hesitates in his reply. We see another demonic face flash. Reagan pukes up more green vomit as they pray for her. Karras takes Marin's sash and cleans it in the bathroom. Marin walks the room as the cabinets close over and over, and Reagan laughs at them. Marin begins to cough and yells, I cast you out. Then the roof cracks and items in the room fall over. Reagan grunts and her head spins around again and the room shakes. She tells Karras he killed her mother and he gets mad at her. Her eyes roll back and she levitates. And this is when they chant, the power of Christ compels you, over and over. She sinks back down to the bed and Karras binds her hands back together. But she arises and hits him as he tries to bind her legs. The room shakes and knocks Marin into the wall. Marin sees the statue from the desert behind her. He prays bedside again. Marin suggests they rest before they try the exorcism again. Karras and Marin sit in the hallway and chat. Marin asks to be excused and goes into the bathroom and takes his medicine. Karras sees his mother sitting on Reagan's bed now, then sits beside a growling Reagan. He hears his mother's voice from her. Karras says her heart is off and she's going to a coma. His mother's voice comes back again and Marin has him leave. Marin pulls out more holy water and a cross and splashes her. He kneels beside her and prays again. Chris finds Karras sitting downstairs and he says it's not over yet, and she asks if Reagan's going to die, and he says no. The doorbell rings and it's the lieutenant. Karras goes in Reagan's room and we see Marin's dead from a heart attack, and I wrote he gives him some intense CPR blows to the chest. Reagan laughs and Karras punches her and begs the spirit to come into me. He becomes possessed and jumps out the window, killing himself. Reagan crawls to the corner, crying for her mother. The lieutenant sees all the death. A mob circles and sees the dead Father Karras now. Father Dyer weeps as he holds his dead body. Now we see Chris and others packing up the house, ready to move out. She tells Sharon she will miss her. Father Dyer arrives and Chris tells him that Reagan doesn't remember anything. Reagan sees the priest collar and hugs and kisses Father Dyer. Chris stops one last time and gives Dyer a necklace with the amulet from Marin. He gives it back to her and the car drives off. Father Dyer walks away and looks at the steps where the deaths happened. Dyer tells the lieutenant he just missed them and the girl seems fine. They shake hands and he asks Father Dyer to see a film with him, but he's already seen it. Then they walk away and more tubular bells play and the end credits roll. All right, Brian, what do you think about that epic ending?
I fucking loved it. I love the ending. I mean, and now I haven't talked much about in this review about the cinematography, up in the movie up to this point because mostly, and this may be a hot take, but I think it might have been a little bit subpar, if you're to say. I mean, at least it didn't stand out as being bad, but it was just nothing special. But I will give credit where credit is due and say that shit. I mean, everything from when Marin steps out of that cab, to that iconic shot of him just in the fog, in the front of that house. That is a incredible shot. And there's no wonder that thing has become iconic staple when talking about this movie. And, to me, the movie does not drag here in the third act whatsoever. I mean, it just the shot of the priests, walking by the family, and the maids, and walking into Reagan's room, just they're like warriors preparing for battle almost. And I think that's just another example of a great shot. And you've seen it much of the movie, with the cold air in Reagan's room, but it's really stands out as really prevalent, and maybe because it's nighttime, I don't know, but it really sets just a fantastic fucking atmosphere here. It makes you, or makes me anyway, almost cold just watching it. And a fact, the refrigerated bedroom set was actually cooled with four air conditioners, and temperatures would apparently go below 30 degrees. It was so cold that actual perspiration would freeze on some of the cast and crew. And on one occasion, the air was saturated with moisture, resulting in a thin layer of snow falling on the set before the crew arrived for filming. That's insane. Um, to me, again, this is what makes this movie, this set of scenes for me anyway, because of, if you believe in this stuff, in the whole eternal battle of heaven and hell, I mean, just listening to the words the priest says, it's powerful just watching it and listening to them. And you feel just their performance is amazing. I mean, you feel how tired they are when they take that break, in the middle of it. I mean, it's just, and you definitely see. I mean, it's not a secret. I mean, you can see Damien, having to take over, coming, from a mile away. But I think it's very well done. His sacrifice is just such a fitting end, and another reason why I hate that, in Exorcist 3, which William Peter Blatty actually did, that Father Damien doesn't die at the end of this movie. He actually supposedly survived the fall, and even Jason Miller returns to play him again. But he's half the time in that movie he's played by Miller, who, and half he actually still plays Karras, and half the time he's played by, surprisingly enough, he's actually the other half played by Brad Dourif, which is actually a pretty cool little tidbit. But all in all, I think that this ending of this movie is elite.
Yeah, I think from a effects standpoint, movie making standpoint, it's fantastic. It is just really stands the test of time. And I'm repeating myself because I feel like I'm about to commit, some kind of crime. But because of my beliefs, this ending doesn't do a lot for me as far as a interest standpoint. Now, again, I can sit back and appreciate the marvel of what they did to make these scenes happen, especially back then. And so I'm all for that, and I recognize it as a masterclass of film. I really do. But as far as for me, it gets a little bit too silly is not the right word because it feels so dismissive and disrespectful, but it doesn't hook with me. It doesn't sit with me. I just this once we kind of get into the levitating and all of that stuff, that just doesn't move me, doesn't move my needle. And so while I think it's really well shot and made, especially you mentioned Brian, and I was going to talk about it off the top, the shot of Marion in the fog, it's timeless. It's great. I love it. It's awesome. And so there's a lot of good from a movie making standpoint, but as far as a horror movie hooking me in, I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. Just not for me. And I do think maybe time and age is kind of probably worn it down some. And I didn't see it back then. And I didn't see it probably until about the year, I don't know, 2009 maybe. And so again, it didn't age well for me, but I think more so because it's not where my mind goes when I think of horror. And so I'm not scared while it's happening. And I think some of the more, fantastical elements of it just didn't sit with me. So it's a mixed bag. And that's kind of where I'm going to get to when we talk about our rating and review, the end thoughts. It's a mixed bag for me. Really good filmmaking. Just the story is is what it is at this point for me.
Yeah. So the thing about this set of scenes was that it's all great. That's pretty much it. The scenes in the bedroom, man, were they perfectly done. The lighting, the camera angles, it was all brilliant. How you could really see the breath, and it just really drove home how cold it was in there, like Brian touched on. I thought that the cinematography in that set of scenes, like I said earlier, I mean, I thought the whole movie was beautifully done as for the time that it was made. But this set of scenes really drives it home. Marin's arrival, like you guys said, is very iconic. You get the shot from the poster. You get the shot that's parodied in Scary Movie 2, another scene when the priest arrives. It's just a very iconic moment. Marin's death was shocking, but I feel like it could have been more dramatic. I feel like it wasn't really played up enough for what it could have been. Like, this guy comes all this way, and he's the one that's walking Karis through this, and he's helping him do this, and he's casting out this demon. And then when he dies, it's kind of like, oh, he died. Like, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of a letdown, but the rest of the set of scenes is just great. Karis's realization of what must be done and the acceptance of his demise, I thought was beautiful. When he's just like, he finally goes, he's been struggling with his faith and what he needs to do this whole time. And then that moment of realization that he's just like, okay, let's do this, mother. Like, I really appreciated the way that he just tackled the demon by the horns there. And then the last thing that I have on this set of scenes is, did we really trust her? Like, the ending of the movie when she walks outside and Chris is like, oh, she doesn't remember a thing. Did we really trust that? Because especially when another priest rolls up on the spot, it's like, did that make anyone else feel anxious, or was it just me? Like, I don't know. I felt like something else was coming. Maybe even just a little glimpse back at the camera from her where you could see the demon still inside her. I felt like something was coming, but I like that they didn't do that, because I don't. Is this movie scary? Not to me, not scary,
Right.
but it's very uncomfortable and unnerving because, like Ryan and I've said, this is not our bag. This is not our cup of tea. And that's not Mike's cup of tea in a different way. This is not our thing. Like, we don't fuck with this, but it's not scary. But it's just, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to welcome this into my house, and so I'm glad that they let me just have a moment of peace at the end of this movie.
Do y'all got any more final thoughts before we jump into a few fan questions?
And Dustin, you made a great point. Had they done that, they killed their film, because then it's any other horror movie ever made. The last, jump scare moment, that would have really been a big thumbs down. So I'm really glad they didn't do that too.
Yep, I agree.
Yep.
All right, the first question we have is from Mark_Hef from Instagram. He says, hi, guys. I love the pod and amazing show each time you guys sit down. Thank you. Question for you. Have you ever watched this movie and felt strange, almost like watching it makes the demon aspect open to you? I know it's strange, but I am Catholic, so this movie was banned in Ireland for a very long time when it was released. I think we've kind of we can all answer this. I think we've all kind of touched on it. I think if you believe in demons, this movie's going to creep you out some because, I've told these guys I don't necessarily live the best Christian life, but I believe in it, and demons terrify me, and I never want to experience one. Brian, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I've kind of spoke on the same thing. Like, I don't want to fuck with that at all, and I try to pay attention to what the hell I'm doing. Like, it unnerves me to watch the movie because I know that you can just I believe that you can unwillingly invite a demon, into your house or into your home to start fucking with you. But and I try to. It bothers me to even watch a movie like that because I'm so I pay attention to that so much. So yes,
Mike?
Yeah. So obviously, I've kind of already answered this, but no, it doesn't do that for me. But I completely am understanding in I've been there's a lot of people in my life that are like that, so I get it, and no, it doesn't scare me in that way. It doesn't unnerve me in that way. And I can watch this morning, noon, or night. But if you can't, then I think that's kind of why this movie is so timeless for a lot of people. So I do get it. It's just it doesn't scare me because of my beliefs.
Yeah, no. So this movie not necessarily, but felt like it was welcoming something in. But yeah, like I said earlier, I don't like it. It's unnerving because how I was raised and everything. But I don't know if I've shared this on air before. I think I've told you guys this. I'll share it here. The only time I felt like a movie like this has welcomed something into my house was back when the Exorcism of Emily Rose came out. I bought that movie on DVD to watch with my friend group. We watched it. I brought it home. Next day, I laid it on. This is before flat screen TVs. So, the TVs were the box TVs that you could sit something on top of and use it as a shelf. I set the DVD case on top of the TV, flat, away from the edge, walked away, took a good 5-6 steps away, and I heard something sound like it hit the ground. I turned around. That DVD was on the ground. So I immediately gave that DVD away. Did not last another 2 hours in my house. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that welcomed something in my house. But that's my experience with that. Fuck this movie and everything it stands for.
I can say I am in your boat with this, that I have never seen Exorcism of Emily Rose because I do not want to see that movie. So the day that somebody picks that, Mike will, I don't want to watch that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's one that I like. Be careful, Brian. I'm sorry, bud.
I was about to
I'm
say
shocked.
the
I'm
fact you
shocked.
just said that, Brian, Mike's going to pick it like next week now.
I know.
No, I would not do that to Brian, but I will go ahead and warn you.
Yes, he would.
Within a year or so, I'm probably going to pick it because as far as this kind of movie, that one's kind of my favorite. It's a guilty pleasure, at least.
Yeah, Deborah Logan is pretty good too. All right, the next question we got from Instagram is from Dom, not Tom Cruise. That's a pretty cool name. He wrote, "The Exorcist is iconic. Which modern horror movie do you think could stand the test of time as well as The Exorcist has?" Whew. None of them, really.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say nothing that's come out in a long time.
The only thing I think make us do it is something like Hereditary, even if I'm not a fan of it. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of this, Get Out has a big.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Get Out is close.
Yeah, something like that.
I think the first Saw might.
Yeah.
I know, but it's just, there's a reason why this has stood the test of time is because there's just not many that do fall in that category.
I agree. I would agree with you about Saw though. That was a different one.
I have one.
And what about Scream? Maybe Scream. Do you consider that a modern?
Well, no, I think it's definitely Scream stands for itself now. Being that we're so far removed. As far as modern goes, if this movie hadn't used so much damn CGI, I think that first It had a shot. But that CGI in 20-something years is just not going to age well. So it kind of ruined his boat there.
Yeah, I'll say Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Go ahead.
He would. I knew he would.
All right. All right.
I'm Michael Myers' sister. Don't you fucking understand?
All right. Here we're going to Facebook now. Sean Irwin wrote, "It's not about the movie, but about the poster. Does it still work 40 years later to give an unsettling vibe?" Yes, I think so.
Yes, Absolutely. It does. Absolutely.
Yeah, that visual is awesome. Perfectly shot. All right, big fan of the show. Hunter Nelson asked, "How do you guys feel about a reboot reportedly in the works?" Personally, I feel like it should have been a one-off. The original director doesn't even want to be anywhere near it, and made that pretty clear from what I saw in the Twitter post he made about the rumors of him being attached to the movie. Yeah, I definitely don't think this movie needs to be remade. This is the movie that started this subgenre of horror. It definitely doesn't need to be remade, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is like Psycho. Like you don't remake it. It's not going to end well for that movie. No.
I think that's really stupid. I don't think it's necessary. Look, they tried a bunch of sequels that I thought were unnecessary. I mentioned it in the pre-show, Exorcist 2, Bethuzu's Boogaloo, whatever the fuck it's called. Like, that movie's not necessary. Exorcist, I'll say this. Exorcist 3 if Exorcist 3 were Exorcist 2, I'd feel a lot better about it. It's not a bad film, but I definitely don't need to see a remake or a reboot of another classic unless they do something very different and very good. That's the only way a remake works, which is why Psycho stinks to high heaven because it's Vince Vaughn playing this. Anyway, don't do it. Please don't do it. And I know that David Gordon Green was attached to it for a little bit. Please don't do that. Please.
Yeah, it was rumored 2015, and yeah, I'm glad they killed that. Now they did do the show for I guess 2 seasons, 20 episodes from 2016 2018. The Exorcist. I didn't watch it. I don't plan to watch it. It too can go to hell. But yeah, no, I think that sometimes not everything needs to be remade. Now there's a lot of movies from the past that I do think need to get remade. I've mentioned this before about I'm surprised that They Live. John Carpenter's They Live hasn't been remade because how far technology, like the cool things they could do with the special effects. But that's not considered a cult classic that was just so highly regarded as this film is. Certain things you just don't fuck with, and the original is one of them. Shout out to friends of the show.
All right, this is the last question we got from Facebook. It's from Michelle Mirza. This movie scares the crap out of me. I was able to watch as a teenager, but as an adult cannot watch it anymore. Does this movie scare any of you at all? This movie doesn't scare me, but I don't want to watch it anymore either, though. But not because I'm not scared of it.
I've answered it and don't want to keep being disrespectful, so no.
Yeah, like I said, it's not scary, it's unnerving.
Well, that's all the questions we got. Y'all want to jump into fun facts real quick?
Yeah, some remakes are better than the originals. Just throwing that out there. Texas Chainsaw.
Ooh, hot take.
Agreed.
I agree with. I'll knock my fun facts out real quick. I got them all off IMDb. Due to death threats against Linda Blair from religious zealots who believed the film, in quotes, glorified Satan, Warner Brothers had bodyguards protecting her for 6 months after the film's release. The bedroom set, we've already said that one. But Linda Blair, to this day, says she still cannot stand being cold. The original teaser trailer, which consisted of nothing but images of the white-faced demon quickly flashing in and out of darkness, was banned in many theaters as it was deemed too frightening. If adjusted for inflation, this would be the highest-grossing R-rated film of all time. According to William Friedkin, the subliminal shots of the white-faced demon are actually rejected makeup tests for Reagan's possessed appearance. And the last one I have is Father Dyer is played by William O'Malley, an actual priest who until 2012 taught at Fordham Prep at Jesuit High School. Or has anybody else got fun facts?
I only have one. I thought it was kind of funny, but in 1985, when Joel Schumacher, who by the way single handedly ruined the Batman franchise, but he was filming St. Elmo's Fire at Georgetown and attempted to get permission from the Jesuit priest faculty at the school to film there. He was rejected, and Schumacher complained to the faculty, "You let Bill Friedkin film The Exorcist here in '73, and one of the characters in that movie said, 'Your mother sucks cock in hell.'" One of the Jesuit priests answered, "Yeah, but the devil didn't win in their movie."
That's funny. I've got a few. We touched on Max von Sydow. His age at the time was actually 44, but I also wanted to give a shout out to Nico because that that actor actually went on to star in his favorite trilogy of all time. He was in Rush Hour 3, played Reynard. The studio wanted Marlon Brando for the role of Father Marin, but Friedkin immediately vetoed, saying that with Brando in it, it would become a Brando movie instead of the important film he wanted to make. Audrey Hepburn was Friedkin's first choice to play Chris, and Warner Brothers actually supported him because of her good critical and commercial reputation with the studio, but she only agreed to do it if it was filmed in Rome. And I wrote, "What a diva!" So she dropped out. The producers sought to have Jamie Lee Curtis audition for the role of Reagan, but her mother, Janet Leigh, refused. So that would have been interesting to see her in '73 play this, and then, of course, go on to play that character I guess she's had some success with later in the decade. DC, Boston, and other major cities in America ignored the MPAA's R rating and actually gave it a rating of X instead. So that's to tell you how shocking and unpopular this movie was at the time.
I can see why.
Yeah. In 1992, Pantera, they had an album called A Vulgar Display of Power, and that actually comes from this film. when Father Karras asks her, "Why can't you make the restraints disappear?" And the demon replies, "That's much too vulgar a display of power." So that's where they got the title for that album. Alfred Hitchcock turned down the chance to acquire the screen rights to the novel, and also turned down their chance to direct the film when other producer brought the rights to the property. So that would have been interesting to see Hitchcock do this. And another person that fell through would have made Brian like this so much more. Stanley Kubrick. He actually wanted to direct it, but only if he could produce it himself. But the studio was afraid he'd go over budget, so they went with who they went with.
Even the studio knows.
They figured he would spend too much time with aerial views of Washington, D.C. and Iraq, so they just...
No doubt. It would be 3 hours long, not 2 hours and 1 minute.
Hey, Brian, go okay.
Entertainment Weekly and Maxim Magazine voted this the scariest movie of all time. Al Pacino and Gene Hackman were both considered for, among other young men, for the leading role of Father Karras. The last one I thought this one was extremely interesting, especially considering we just reviewed The Birds. But did you guys know that The Exorcist played a part in Tippi Hedren's divorce? So William Peter Blatty, who wrote the film and the screenplay, or in the book, he became friends with Tippi Hedren in the early 70s. And she actually named one of her lines Billy after him. He gave her a copy of his unpublished novel, The Exorcist, and she got so caught up reading it that she woke up her husband at the time, Noah Marshall, in the middle of the night and told him that he should represent Blatty in publishing the novel and the film adaptation. So go on. They had a little agreement that when the film got produced, that Marshall would be credited as executive producer for the film, and he was supposed to receive 15% of the profits. So then the movie becomes a blockbuster, and Blatty kind of reneged on his deal because they never signed a contract. They just had a gentleman's agreement in place. And this caused much frustration and friction between Hedren and Marshall, because they were having financial stress at the time because they had all these tigers and lions apparently for the film that they were making at the time, Roar, in 1981. So the financial stress actually led to their divorce. Many years later, Blatty ran into Hedren at a party and said hello, and she walked by without even acknowledging him. So I thought that was very interesting. Tippi Hedren
that is very interesting.
Was just in The Birds that we just talked about. So yeah.
Yeah, normally this is the area where I come in and talk a little bit about the financials, but by God, I actually have a few. Okay, first of all, there's a it's only like two, but don't But there's actually a Twisted Sister song called Captain Howdy, and they named it after obviously Captain Howdy in this movie. Just thought that was kind of fun. Same album that has the "We're Not Going to Take It" song on it, so that's kind of a fun little factoid if you know it. This movie, obviously, this is not so much of a fun fact, but it's something that we didn't touch on a ton. This movie is known as one of the most cursed horror films of all time. No, one of the most cursed films of all time. So much so that Shudder did a whole, episode in their series Cursed Films on this movie. Linda Blair, really, the fact that there's even quotes from Linda Blair is kind of surprising because she doesn't even like to talk about this movie anymore. And so I think that's kind of, that plays into the cursed film thing. I mean, this set had fires. There was an extra that ended up being a murderer. He's sitting outside the hospital or he ended up being a murderer a few years after that or a few months after that. So that was, Linda Blair got injured long-term in her back. Ellen Burstyn did. There's a fire that almost burned down the entire set except for Reagan's bedrooms, which the filmmaker thought was very strange. It literally burned every part of the set but that bedroom that they were filming all of those scenes in. And this movie has a very long history for people having nauseous reactions where they would leave the theater for vomiting or they'd faint right in their seat when they first saw it. So even one woman blamed a miscarriage on this film. And so it has a long history of being cursed. And I'm going to source that to Shudder. And if you have Shudder, which you should, first of all, Shudder, please sponsor us. Second of all, Y'all would definitely check out Cursed Films if you're into that kind of thing. I thought it was very, very interesting. You can't talk about The Exorcist without talking about that. So I thought that was kind of fun. Oh, also, it had a $12 million budget. Hold on. I have the numbers. I'm sorry I'm unprofessional as hell here.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, had a $12 million budget and a $441.3 million box office. So this movie made a little bit of motherfucking money. Some real motherfucking money, as Butters would say.
Yeah, I watched a little like 20 so minute long video on YouTube about like when this movie came out, and the lines for this to just get into this theater was like, it looked like trying to get into Doak Campbell 30 minutes before and all that. It was ridiculous. Back when we were good, not recently.
I was gonna say I went there a year ago and wasn't no line.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into our favorite kill, least favorite kill, and the rating. Brought to you by our sponsor, Manscaped. Just go to their website and use our code Don't Go for free shipping and 20% off, which is a really good deal. Who wants to go first tonight in our rating? Or
Me.
Go ahead. I'll go after you, Mike.
All right, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna get my shit out of the way, and then you guys can talk about it since I don't want to keep being disrespectful to our listeners. Okay. So I don't really have a favorite kill and least favorite kill because I don't really know how you could per se.
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, so I really didn't even write one down. I just got lost in all the filmmaking stuff. So sorry about that. I know that's kind of a sponsored segment, but I really don't have one. I guess Burke is my favorite and least favorite kill because fuck him. That's why.
Damn grandpa.
I'm just saying. Okay, so this movie, I know I'm cheating here, and I already told the guys I'm giving this movie 2 separate ratings, but I only want Dustin to include my personal rating because that's the only fair way to do this. So look, I've said everything I really have to say about that. What I think about the movie, I think it's a masterclass in filmmaking, but I also don't care for this kind of movie. It doesn't scare me. I don't find it all that interesting of a story. And so that's just me and my personal beliefs. And so that kind of affects the way I enjoy this film. For all that being said, I gave this movie a 6 on an enjoyment scale. And I thought that was kind of generous because this last viewing gave me a little bit more of an appreciation for the filmmaking. So I'm allowing that to creep in even into my enjoyment rating. On a filmmaking scale, this is a 9 out of 10. It is a fantastically made movie from over, what are we at, 50 years ago now? Like this movie, it stands the test of time. But on the rating that's going to be included into our average, I gave it a 6. I think the acting is really, really good. I think everything else about the making of it is really interesting and very ahead of its time, but just not my cup of tea from a story standpoint. So I gave it a 6.
All right, I'll go now. My favorite kill I wrote was Father Karras, seeing him possessed, then out the window. I thought that was a good scene. My least favorite kill, I just chose Father Marin, who dies off screen with a heart attack. But you could have picked Karras' mother, too. I mean, they're both off screen, basically. All right, for my rating, I wrote this. This was the hardest movie to rate for me in the show's 100-episode history. On one hand, I think this is a good movie that changed the horror genre forever. It was groundbreaking when it released, and my mother, still to this day, says it's the scariest movie she's ever experienced. I think the makeup of Reagan looks good still, and some of the effects are still good. Linda Blair, Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, and Jason Miller all gave really good performances. And on the other hand, while I do think this is a horror movie that every fan should watch, it's very low in the rewatchability factor. I almost would never grab this just to watch for enjoyment. I don't think some of it aged well, and it's way too long, either version. Like I said, like y'all have said already, I feel the entire Iraq scene at the beginning could be cut, amongst other things. I rated this a 7 due to liking it and appreciating what it's done. However, I can't say I'd ever watch it again due to its low enjoyment factor. But 7 out of 10, I think that's still pretty decent.
I'll go ahead and go. I've talked this entire time and kind of given my opinion, so I'll just kind of make this short and sweet. But my favorite kill was Karis, mostly because they showed it. And any of the off-screen kills were my least favorites. Again, like I said earlier, I don't really understand why they shied away from showing that, but then showed some of some of the other stuff that they did show. My rating for this movie, I've done a lot of some movies I'll rate on enjoyment factor. Some ratings I'll just rate because like The Shining, for instance, I'm just appreciation for how well they're made and different things. But I gave this movie an 8.5.
8.5. All right. Now we're talking. So yeah, least favorite kill could be a tie between Karras's mother, Burke, Father Marin.
Yeah.
You take a pick. They all those deaths weren't good. The only one that I appreciated, I guess, was Karras, and it's just because the character. But who was that said earlier that he supposedly lived? But anyway,
Yeah, they made him live and actually play the same character in Exorcist 3.
Oh
okay,
wow.
that's wild. But yeah, his I'm gonna count it as a death because I don't acknowledge movies.
I did too.
So I'll go with his. Now, as far as my rating, I also went with a 8.5. Brian, I think that this movie really transcends the horror genre. I think that it stands the test of time as far as the creepy factor. I think that no, it's not scary to me, but it's unnerving. I don't like it. So yeah, that's where I went with it, and that gives our composite rating as 7.5.
Okay, so the
Sorry to
IMDb
break
was
it
an
down.
8.0.
Sorry to break it down, fellas.
Well, I mean, the IMDb rating was 8.0, so we're only a 0.5 away. So,
All right.
but like Mike said, I texted y'all. My rating could have been anywhere between a 5 or a 9. It's just I kind of just met in the middle and just kind of set on it.
Yeah, that's kind of
But
what I tried to do too.
I think 7.5 overall is pretty. I think it's pretty accurate, honestly.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that we all can agree that had they trimmed about anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes from this film, it probably would have went up at least a half point for all of us.
I would have given it a whole point. I really would have. They have condensed this movie down to the main characters and the main plot.
And think about it, fellas. I did the scene by scene on the one that was 2 hours and 20 minutes long.
Right.
So yeah, you could definitely cut a lot of this stuff out, and make it better. But that was episode 100. The Exorcist, I think, was a great choice to celebrate this milestone. Do y'all got any more final thoughts before I announce my next pick for Creature Feature and our last insert in Creature Feature?
The only final thoughts that I have is just, thank you to everybody for allowing us to go 100 episodes and actually have, a following of people that actually listen to us talk shit. So thank you guys to everybody.
I agree with that 100%. To piggyback off what Brian said, it blew my mind that we actually had 5-6 questions. Like when we started this thing, I think our family were the only people asking questions, and now we have people from across the freaking pond asking us about this movie. So just so surreal. Thank you for 100 episodes. It's been a blast.
Yep, it's been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't been here from the beginning of the journey like you all have. I was kind of that cousin that you only saw at their family reunions. I was kind of like that cousin at the family reunions that you only let speak when spoken to because he says some outlandish shit. But I've been welcomed into the family now.
Now you're a kissing cousin.
Yeah, you got that right. Bring it on in, guys.
Now you're Angelina Jolie and her brother. Oh, my bad.
Oh, Jesus. But no, I appreciate you guys bringing me in full time. I appreciate all the fans, all the support. Like, it blows my mind to know that I'm a part of something that has the following we have. It blows my mind to know that I'm a part of something that's accomplished some of the things we have. Like when you look at the list of names that we've had a chance to interview, and like that is impressive in and of itself. Then you add to the fact that we've done it for 100 episodes now, and we're still really only scratching the surface of our potential, I feel like. So I look forward to another 100 more before I need to renegotiate my contract.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and announce my pick next week for a Creature Feature. This is one that I know Mike likes it, but I'm kind of thinking we're going to get back to Dustin not liking my picks again. But I'm really curious, and I'm kind of curious how Brian's going to feel about it too. But I'm picking the Babadook for the last Creature Feature insert. I think this is a really good movie. I'll go ahead and warn everyone who hasn't seen it. The little kid is annoying as hell, but it's a good
I've never
movie.
seen it.
So yeah, we're
But
going to close out Creature Feature with the Babadook.
I will
Oh, Nico
say,
says it's a good movie. Yeah, I probably don't like it.
yeah, that's standard fare around here. But what I will say is, I'm not going to give everything away, but that kid is annoying on purpose. It kind of plays into the plot a little bit, so I
Yeah.
think it kind of works. So normally I'm like, fuck this annoying kid, but in this situation, I see why that decision was made. That's all I'm going to say.
But that kid's still annoying as hell, though, even if it is on purpose.
No
But
doubt.
just want to say thank you to the fans one more time. We really appreciate support, and y'all have a good one. Just want to remind everybody